from the Beacon Capital Management Weather Center.
Unsettled weather returns to the mid-state. I'm WSMV4 First Alert Meteorologist Stefano DiPietro. Keep an eye out for a passing shower or thunderstorm this afternoon. Any thunderstorm could produce damaging wind gusts and heavier rainfall. High temperatures will top off in the 80s today.
6:37, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 89.7 WTN. Welcome on in, and I want to say good morning to Steve Yates with the Heritage Foundation National Security Expert and our guest. I think, Steve, a lot of people were alarmed and quite frankly horrified at the news that these Chinese scientists arrested for allegedly trying to smuggle this dangerous fungus into the country, Fusarium. And so I've got a lot of questions about this, but number one, it could destroy crops. Is there any indication that their intention was some sort of agro-terrorism?
Well, there's an initial report that gets into the communications on the devices of one of these two individuals that supposedly has a report that has in its title plant pathogen warfare. So who carries that kind of a report around on their phone? Who writes that kind of report? It's really kind of bread and butter People's Liberation Army coming from China. There's not a lot of others that get into that kind of deep research with a dark target. And so it does seem like in some ways our system worked in finding these two people, but in a lot of ways our system hasn't worked in that we've spent 25 years getting people to take their belt and shoes off at the airport, and somehow these guys were bringing a dangerous pathogen in their shoes.
Well, and you know, my concern, Steve, is that we've just spent 4 years with Joe Biden at the helm, and of course his incredibly inept administration. And so is there a fear that, you know, there's a lot of this kind of thing, this agro-terrorism that is already in this country?
Well, we have a lot to be concerned about. We've been fighting a battle in the States that has been trying to look at where land has been purchased by people with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. The initial reaction to a lot of that was people tried to use the race card. Frankly, the Chinese government tried to accuse us of being ethnically prejudiced against Chinese people, kind of ignoring the fact that there are millions and millions and millions of Chinese people in the world who don't have anything to do with the Communist Party, don't have anything to do with the People's Republic. But the use of land close to our sensitive sites, the purchase of sensitive things in our country, even students. We had students in the University of Florida that were picked up for gathering dangerous pathogens and trying to send them back to China for further development. And there's this weird lab out in California in 2022 that had all kinds of dangerous things in it, direct ties to the CCP. So there's kind of a Sesame Street exercise of one of these things is not like the others, and it's China that seems to have brought us these weird things like COVID, fentanyl, that it seems an awful lot like a biological, chemical attack on the United States, and really only one purpose, to hold us down and maybe dissuade us if there is an effort by them to take Taiwan or otherwise come after us.
Well, and you're right, and I have long spoken about Donald Trump trying to crack down on China, keep an eye on China. Of course, we all know about, you know, their stealing of intellectual property and so forth. These two scientists, by the way, they say that the story goes that they were going to study at a University of Michigan lab. So is there a concern with the universities?
Absolutely. They've been far, far too permissive in the sort of forgiving interpretation that might be just assigned to that wonderful human quality known as greed, where research money comes in from overseas, whether it's students or older researchers. These were not two young lovebirds. These were kind of mid-career people that were bringing things in and would have relatively free access to an important lab. Our laboratories want to have kind of cutting-edge things done, but cutting-edge things can only be done when there's guardrails like rule of law, protection of intellectual property, ethics, respect for human dignity. These are all things that the Chinese Communist Party doesn't respect. That's how we have the global problems we do. And so I think our universities have been far too permissive of people coming from a system. And frankly, whether it's Homeland, education, but in a lot of our other institutions, we just have to recognize China is different under this leadership. In many ways, they behave as if they are at war with us in a certain way. We don't want to be at war with them, but we've got to start taking measures where we know that people coming from one particular country under this current government don't have our best interests at heart, and we can't allow them free access to sensitive things.
Well, the president has talked about canceling student visas at Harvard for people coming in from other countries and foreign student visas and so forth. Do you think that's the right answer? I mean, we were talking about this yesterday where, we literally are allowing these Chinese students to come in and we are educating them, and then some of them stay, some of them go. But I mean, ultimately, the question is, are we educating our enemy?
Well, we certainly aren't bringing them in for them to study gender theory and English literature and other kinds of things. They disproportionately are going into the hard sciences, engineering, and sometimes with just a little bit of follow-through on who did we invite in and who were they talking to, we find out that they're trying to take field trips to military bases or combing around different websites to gather information, all of which you'd sort of expect from a hostile intelligence service, but people somehow thought these were just ordinary researchers or students. And so I think part of this just has to begin at the beginning. We start with respecting sovereignty in our border. Second, we have to have more people asking real questions when there are folks coming from troubled geographies. Not every geography is of a concern, but we have to have priorities, and China really needs to be near the top of that priority list at this point.
How do we, and I'm gonna ask you this, and then I'm gonna have to take a very, very quick traffic break, but in a perfect world, if Steve Yates, national security experts with the Heritage Foundation, if you were in charge of dealing with China, what would we do? And we're going to talk about that coming up next. What would you do? We'll talk about that coming up next. 6:45, time to check the roads on WTN.
Dixon, 40 eastbound before Centerville Dixon, we've got an accident. No problems coming in on 24 or 65. No unusual delays on 440. Riverfront, CMA fast. Watch for road closures, including First Avenue between Broadway and Mumbrian. I'm Christy O'Brien.
Partly cloudy today, a high of 89, 69 now, possible storms as well. All right, so Steve, let me ask you, President Trump is trying to weaken China through sanctions, not sanctions, but the tariffs. And that makes all the sense in the world. A week into China is better for us. But, what is the best way to deal with China as it relates to the fentanyl coming across the southern border? We certainly saw a lot of that during the Biden administration. We could go down the road of COVID and the constant threat of viruses. Now we have this agro-terrorism situation we're dealing with. I mean, what's the best way to deal with them?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to undo the unwise dependency that it was a mistake for the United States and a lot of the world to become overly dependent by our own choice and doing on any one country in the world, but then for it to be the country that is the People's Republic of China, where there are no ethics, there is no transparency, there is no accountability, well, that's just begging for trouble. So I think the first key that I really like out of the Trump team, it has to be American renewal, American revival, but taking seriously our country, our borders, our jobs, our people, and get at our resources. And do that together with the true responsible stakeholders in the world, allies that are on board with us on investing in America, developing things that will run the world, but do it in a responsible way. And as we do that, the economic weight and strategic weight of that coalition just dwarfs what China is. In some ways, ignoring them and marginalizing them, leaving them behind, is the power play, because we can, and our options for containing their malign influences will be better. But we still have to face them head on. I mean, really, when someone brings death into your family, as happened with COVID and fentanyl hit my family in particular, and, it can't take that as a light challenge. This is not a theoretical issue. If we had a device go off in a major city with 400,000 casualties, we'd be in a fundamentally different posture, and especially toward the country that was the source. And yet that's what happened in the Biden 4 years with fentanyl. And we can't play games that they didn't know. This is a government that goes after people with an unauthorized image of Winnie the Pooh as a political criticism of their leader. They know where the fentanyl's coming from. So I think that the administration is beginning at the start to reset what America is and who it's doing business with. But it has to also reset at the start. What are we ready to negotiate with China about, and where are we just going to leave them behind?
So trying to leave China behind, is India a good alternative?
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to have fits and starts there that for whatever reason they let a lot of Fabian socialism get into their culture, but they have a dynamic leader. It's Asia's other billion people. They are a democracy. And there's plenty of our supply chains that could move there. The world put trillions of dollars into China to make it this manufacturing hub for the world. It's not going to be free or easy to change those things, but the cost of lives we've lost just in this mistake in recent years, I think, proves that we have to make the change. India's there, but really we could do more in our own hemisphere. Maybe we'd get more responsible governments in our own backyard that would address everything from the migration flows, the sort of odd ties to radicals in the Middle East, but also encroachment by China, and we'd get those minerals, rare earths, and others that we need for our high-tech manufacturing economy to hum.
Steve Yates, national security expert with the Heritage Foundation. Appreciate you being with us. Real quickly, in the news this morning, Donald Trump is now apparently he's expanded his ban of people coming in from 19 countries from entering the United States. This was news yesterday. I think it was early evening and overnight. This is what the president says about why he's doing it.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them.
There seems to be an extension of what he did in the first administration. He's talking about nationals of Afghanistan, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Antira, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Myanmar, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. A lot of these various countries we're all very familiar with. Was this a surprise to you?
Well, I think actually it is not a surprise, in part because we've lived through this wave of very radicalized protests at universities and in our cities. It is very obviously not organic, and it is not also domestic American citizens that are at the core of it. There's a lot of international influence. This ties back into the universities having an open door for a huge percentage of foreign students. Some of that can be good, but percentage is a little out of whack. And what our authorities are learning is who are some of these people and where are they coming from when they are threatening violence against Americans, who are targeting Jews in very dangerous ways in our cities. We had a couple of people flat out assassinated in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And so we're getting at what people are doing. And I think that helps protect the president against the slander that he's targeting an ethnicity or a religion. He's saying, look, people are coming from these places. They're in our country doing evil things. This is just like China and fentanyl and the bioterror stuff. If you do this, we will find you and we will start to block your entry into our country, because without sovereignty and protecting our citizens, why do we have a federal government?
All right, Steve Yates, great stuff from the Heritage Foundation. We'll have you on again real soon. Great analysis, and have a great rest of day. It is 6:51 on Nashville's Morning News. Joan Jones is back from vacation and has the news at 7. Joan.
Yeah, we've got the latest on President Trump resurrecting that travel ban, and also the new move that he's just taken against Harvard University. That's coming up here at 7 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The Matt Murphy Show.
What's the best way to deal with this? I'm compassionate for people who have been here for a long, long time, who came in illegally, who have done nothing else illegal outside of that initial act, who have been fooled by Democrats into believing that if they lay low, that they'll be forgiven. And I think there's some people in our communities that are here illegally that believe that.
The Matt Murphy Show, today from 3 to 7 p.m.
And streaming on the Supertalk 99.7 WTN app.
Dan Mandis here.